Veterinary medicine is a service industry providing healthcare, not a healthcare industry looking to provide service. And so unless we create a great service experience, we will not be permitted to provide healthcare. And so when people say, well, where do I start? I say, start with the client experience.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of VetFolio Voice. I've got an absolutely fantastic episode for you today. It features Dr. Peter Weinstein, who was one of the most gracious and grounded guests I've ever had the pleasure of speaking with. You might already know Dr. Weinstein from his appearances on other veterinary podcasts, his work in organized veterinary medicine, or his diligent efforts to support entrepreneurship in veterinary medicine. But what really got my attention in a big way and made me just stop what I was doing and reach out to him was his work with Michael Gerber on the book, The E-Myth Veterinarian: Why Most Veterinary Practices Don't Work and What to Do About It. If you're a current or aspiring practice owner, or even if you're just curious about entrepreneurial thinking and how systems can set you up for success, I cannot recommend this book more highly. Seriously, put it up next on your must-read list. Now, normally this is the part of the intro where I try to give a little bit of a summary of what we talked about, but really I don't even know how to summarize it. We had no pre-planned questions, no agenda, we just turned on the microphone, and I absolutely love the conversation that resulted. So if you aren't familiar with Dr. Weinstein, let me tell you a little bit more about him and I'll let you hear it for yourself. Dr. Peter Weinstein is a husband, father, pet parent, veterinarian, and leader. He's been involved with virtually all aspects of veterinary medicine, from being a 15-year-old kennel kid to a hospital owner. Organized veterinary medicine has been a passion as well for him, with various roles in leadership and presidencies of the Southern California VMA, California VMA, and Vet Partners. He's a published author, most notably of The E-Myth Veterinarian: Why Most Veterinary Practices Don't Work and What to Do About It. Currently, among other things, he's teaching business and finance at the Veterinary College of Western University of Health Sciences. He likes to think of himself as a free-thinking change agent and disruptor who, because he has a daughter in veterinary school, is working for an even better veterinary profession in the future. You can absolutely hear all of those sentiments come through in our conversation, so let's jump in.
Microbiome science is a swiftly evolving field that has caught the attention of pet owners. Are you prepared to answer their questions? NAVC's brand new veterinary microbiome certification course will give you the skills to implement microbiome science in your daily practice and improve patient care. New research shows maintaining a balanced gut microbiome is vital for optimal nutrition, disease prevention, and longevity in pets. Register today on vetfolio.com.
Well, I'm really excited for this episode. Dr. Peter Weinstein joining me, and we're going to talk about whatever comes into our mind, which I'm really excited about. This podcast was sort of born out of me reading your book, and I was really impressed by the concepts in it, and that's a whole story in and of itself. So thank you for joining me for this talk.
Thank you, Cassie. It's an honor to be a part of it. And thank you for the invitation to join you. And I look forward to seeing what we can throw against the wall and get to stick.
Absolutely. Me too. Me too. I was very excited when we just kind of decided to wing it and see how it goes.
Yeah, well, and thanks for reading the book. And the book that you're talking about is The E-Myth Veterinarian, which I've had the honor to co-author with Michael Gerber. And I think it's a great resource for young entrepreneurs and any hospital owner to learn how to work on their business and not just in it.
Yes. And I feel like that's such a telltale E-Myth, just verbiage right there of whenever I hear someone say work on my business, not in my business, automatically I know, okay, you've read E-Myth, you're familiar with the concepts. And we talked about this a little bit when we first met, that I've read both Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth, and then The E-Myth Veterinarian that you co-authored. And when I first read The E-Myth, it didn't resonate with me at first. And I'm wondering how common that experience is. The idea of putting these systems in place for really everything. I kind of was in this place where I went, well, I don't know, we're all adults. If you get the right people in there and people are doing their job, do you really have to have it written down in such detail and all these systems? Fast forward 5 years and being a business owner and reading the E-Myth Veterinarian, and does it all make sense now? Where I went, now I get it. And so that's where, yeah, it made me curious, like, I wonder if that's other people's experiences, and is there a way to wrap your head around how important it is to have those systems without experiencing that?
It's a great experience, and thank you for sharing your history with the E-Myth and the E-Myth Veterinarian. I read the E-Myth and the E-Myth Revisited back in the early 90s when you were still in elementary school, if not just born.
I was in elementary school. Yes.
And I owned a hospital. So what does that say? I had been at a conference, a veterinary practice management conference, and they suggested that it would be beneficial for everybody in the audience to read the E-Myth. And I read it, and I read it again, and I highlighted and I dog-eared it. And then I went on. It wasn't really online. I don't recall how we got information back in the dark ages, but
I was just talking to someone about that.
and I found Michael Gerber speaking, and I would go and listen to him speak, and he had cassettes, and back then it was cassettes and some CDs. And so I became what I called a Michael Gerber stalker. And I realized, because when I went to veterinary school at the University of Illinois, how little business knowledge we got, that I really didn't know what I was doing when I opened my hospital. And I made all the mistakes that anybody opening a hospital can make. So I was looking for help, and I got that help through the E-Myth and other business books that I read. And then, of course, I went back and got an MBA as well. So I wouldn't say that's of course, that's just something I did. But I thought systems were the greatest idea in the world because of all of the mistakes that we were making in practice. And the mistakes came from failure to train, failure to hold people accountable, and failure to have a consistent way of doing things. And so when I read the stories about the pie company, and then I turned and I read about the background behind McDonald's and how they were able to serve the millions of people through systems, I said, you know what? We're not going to create robots. And I think that's where veterinarians push back, because we're not trying to create robots. We are just trying to create a consistent way for our team to create a world-class client experience, patient experience, staff experience, et cetera. So I think the pushback comes from, oh yeah, as you said, aren't we all adults in the room? Yeah, but we're adults that need to be taught how we want things done. And that's what we fail to do.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, in particular, I really enjoy dentistry. And so if you said, here is a patient and we're going to, put this patient under anesthesia and do a dental procedure, I can get that done, but man, isn't it easier if you hand me that patient? I'm also speaking from the perspective of a relief doctor. I do some relief work. If you hand me that patient, you say, "Hey, we already did blood work. This dog's been pre-medded with gabapentin and trazodone, so they're happier to come to the hospital, and it's going to be an easier day on everybody. And here's all our monitoring and our technician team that knows how it all works and what we're doing, and here's how we're going to set the equipment up." All of a sudden, we're not having to walk in there and say, "Yes, I am capable of doing this," but now there's so many fewer questions that I have to answer in that procedure because the system is in place. And I think that's a little bit me speaking from working in a hospital where I've seen a lot of this type of thinking be put into place and comparing that to other experiences I've had. And man, it makes a big difference.
Well, and if you think about it, you're doing it from a relief standpoint where you have a baseline of knowledge from your few years out of school. And imagine a new graduate who's
Right.
coming into a practice that has never had an experience at that hospital, and they don't know the standards of care. They don't know how things operate in terms of things. So just creating the systems for a new graduate, well, we can call it mentoring, but that's labor intensive. Systems become a way of teaching and coaching that can be done virtually. It can be done through a video. It can be done through an audio. It can be done in all sorts of different ways. But if you think of systems, when we went to school, even as young as 8th grade or even earlier, we learned about systems in biology: cardiovascular, musculoskeletal, neurological, urogenital, endocrine. Our bodies exist because of the systems that we have. Our practices exist because they're composed of systems as well. The client service system, the exam room system, the treatment room system, the surgery system, the animal caretaker system. So they are all integrated in the same way that our bodies are. So we shouldn't be system averse. Oh, and by the way, we learned about processes. We just didn't call them that. What is a physical exam? It's a step-by-step way of doing things from tip of nose to tip of tail that when you repeat it enough times, we have muscle memory. That's a process. And that's all what we're advocating for. Is to take your practice, break it down into bite-sized pieces, also known as systems or zones, and then look at the processes in all of those areas and create a way to do things that gives you an efficient and effective outcome.
And you end up with happy clients at the end, which is hugely important. I mean, happy clients, but I think it makes everybody happy at the end of the day because, if you're a doctor going into an exam room to do an annual exam and there's a system in place, what information has already been covered and what the recommendations are and how you're going to approach this. There's less floundering. Your mind is more open to be able to discuss more complicated questions and get more individual because you're not spending your time going, well, did we talk about vaccines? What are we do? What kind of heartworm do we carry? What are we doing? It's, when you get it systematized, I think you provide a better client experience from a consistency standpoint, but probably also the ability to be more thorough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we are a very inefficient business model as it is. And if you can create the steps that you want that get you from point A to point Z without having to go through all the letters of the alphabet, you'll get there faster and much more direct. And it goes also to a discussion about leveraging our staff to do things that we don't have to do. And if they can do from B to Y, all we have to do is A and Z. And so part of creating systems is integrating your team into the creation of the systems because they're the ones who do them all the time. I think owners are put off by systems and managers as well, because they think that they are the ones who have to create them. Wrong answer. The team who does them creates them. You don't want me to create a system or a process, for how to clean a cage. Let the kennel kid who does it. You don't want me to answer the phone. I'm not going to create a process for answering the phone. Let the person at the front desk sit. So they build it themselves. And if you build it, then you have ownership. And you want people to do it the same way.
Absolutely. So. And I think it opens up that conversation when they build the system to find the pitfalls, the areas that might be unclear to a new person, but come naturally to someone who's been doing it for a long time, because that's where I think really some frustration can come up. For example, say, surgery induction, we do it this way. Well, if it's so-and-so is trained by the more senior person and they say, well, this is how I do it. And we've all played the game of telephone and things get lost in translation. And next thing you know, why does no one know how to properly and safely induce anesthesia? And we're, missing things or having issues or whatever it may be, versus if it's, really literally spelled out in black and white, this is how we're going to do it. I think you really minimize the frustration on staff and doctors and things like that, and safer for the patient. And again, back to that more thorough part.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on something, which is the game of telephone. And we may have talked about that previously, but that's how we train in veterinary medicine. It's the oldest person teaches the next hire, who then teaches the next hire because the oldest person is left by then. And what we have is no consistency from the outcome that we want. So what we want to do is build a consistent outcome. And if you build these training modules based upon systems and processes, you can hand them to a new hire and say, this is how we answer the phone. This is how we process a credit card payment. This is how we greet a client when they come through the door. This is how we clean a cage. This is how we clean a litter box. This is how we walk a dog. All of a sudden, everybody's doing it pretty much the same way. And you don't have somebody at the front desk who is not getting all information and forgetting to ask the client's name or their phone number, because we have set up a way of then after you create systems and processes, you also have checklists. And the checklists are there to remind you to ask the client for the phone number. And it's all of these different things that come together that ensure you deliver a world-class client experience each time every time. It also means you remind the client to fast the pet the night before you have a surgery scheduled the next day, because I am sure that you have had to deal with that in the past. Do you have time to call a client and say, I'm sorry when you make a mistake? No, because you don't have time to call them the first time. So basically, I look at systems as a accident vaccination program. We're going to give the practice of vaccination of systems so we don't make mistakes, we don't have accidents, and we don't have to say, I'm sorry.
And I wonder, now kind of knowing what I know now, what I've learned as a business owner and then working in different places and seeing the difference in places that do have systems in place. I don't know. For me, it was a crash course. It was a learning by experience and not really seeing the value until I did have to make some of those phone calls that I didn't want to make, nor did I have time to make. And I guess it brought it full circle to say this creates efficiency and just makes everybody's life easier. And I hear what you're saying about we don't want to create robots, and that's where some of the pushback comes from. Is there also a group of people out there who, is just primed and willing, you think, to accept systems and say, yeah, let's do it? Or do we all have to learn the hard way like I did?
I think there are those who have, maybe an engineering background or have worked in a company like Target or a restaurant, because those are very systematized in the way they do things. Have you watched The Bear, the TV show about the
I have
restaurant?
not.
Okay.
It's on my list.
All right. So it's on Hulu. Season 4 has just started, depending upon when you get to watch this or listen to it. The first episode of The Bear, which is about a mom and pop sandwich shop in Chicago. So it'll bring back memories for you.
Go Cubs, go.
The first episode is called The System. And it just basically is about how the different stages and sous chefs and different people have a system for preparation of the meal. And if you want to get a filet cooked perfectly each time, every time, you have a recipe for it. I like to watch Hell's Kitchen. I like to watch MasterChef, Top Chef, all of these things. Well, if you can consistently create a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that's perfect, it's not being a robot, because then you say, oh, let's put some chocolate chips in it. So we've created a new version of the same sandwich, and now you grow. Well, the same thing in a practice. There's a good way to answer the phone, but there may be a better way. And so they're not written in granite. They're written as best practices until another best practices comes along. And so I think that those people who are used to living in a systematic fashion, my dad was an accountant. Well, you want to talk about people who are systematized, that's the accounting field. So my mom was a biology teacher, so she learned about systems and taught systems. So I was raised in that fashion, but it wasn't until I looked at the business as a system that I realized everything we do is a system. When you get up in the morning, if you're like me, you have a way of doing things from the time the alarm goes off to the time you leave for work. And you drive the same way to work. That's a system. Driving your car is a system and processes. So really, why do we push back on it when it comes down to helping our businesses become more effective and efficient?
And I think you just answered that question, actually, is because I think it does take stepping back and looking at it from a business perspective as a whole. I think that might be some of the resistance that I experienced, and I would imagine might be some other people's experience too, of saying, yeah, but all of our patients are individuals, the relationship with their family, that's so individual. We can't systematize that because everyone's different and everyone has different needs. Mrs. Smith likes to talk a whole lot, whereas, Mr. Brown wants to just get out the door as fast as he can. And, so and so is a minimalist, whereas, this person, if her cat sneezes, she's going to be here in 2 minutes. It's so individual. How can we make a system out of that? But you're right. When you step back and you look at the business part of it, which I think can also, depending on how it's presented, that I think we're getting better about it now, but can put a bad taste in people's mouth. Like, no, I'm here to help animals. I'm not here to help a business, to run a business. But the reality that we all know is if the business doesn't run, we can't help any of the animals. But I think it takes that 50,000 foot view to see why the systems apply, and that when you apply the systems, you're not taking away that individuality. You're actually creating more room for it.
Well put. And I will bring that down to a single thought, which may irk some people. Veterinary medicine is a service industry providing healthcare, not a healthcare industry looking to provide service. And so, unless we create a great service experience, we will not be permitted to provide healthcare. And so, when people say, well, where do I start? I say, start with the client experience. Because if you don't answer the phone correctly, if your website isn't set up to make it easy to access your practice, if you don't have an online appointment book or whatever you want to have, you may be setting up barriers to access as a doctor. So if you don't work on your business and look at where the barriers are and where the pain points are, you can't fix them. And we did a survey at one point in time, we did mystery calls in 100 hospitals. Only 50% of the receptionists actually asked for the appointment, and every one of the calls was set up that they would need an appointment. So do you have a system in place that has the receptionist at the end say, we have an appointment Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. or Wednesday afternoon at 3 to ensure that those questions are being asked? And so that's where systems come in. And it's really about building that client relationship. You mentioned the 3 different clients or 4 different clients with different needs. That's where the system comes in as well, because if you don't keep track of those details, that Cassie likes to talk and Peter likes to get in and out, then you try to keep Peter staying and he wants out, and Cassie is being pushed out when she wants to talk. You need to know that information, which means you have to have a system that reviews the client relationship management software and says, okay, we probably need an extra 5 minutes for Cassie, and we need probably get Peter out earlier so we can put him back to back, because there's going to still take 40 minutes, but one will be in 15-minute increment and the other be in 25. You know what I'm saying? It's just, this is where that information becomes useful.
Absolutely. What you said about being a service industry that provides healthcare, I really do agree with you there, that while healthcare for animals, veterinary care is a relatively inelastic thing, that is necessary. It doesn't necessarily have to be at a particular clinic. If you're in an area like where I am, you can throw a rock and you can hit a clinic. And so people have a lot of options and ways that they can pursue veterinary care. So to your point, yes, while the overall need for that healthcare is inelastic, the individual market for that clinic is very elastic, and that market can go away. And when we talk about wanting job satisfaction and longevity in the career, and people who stick around and reducing turnover and things like this, that's where really leaning into that service side of things makes a big difference, I think.
There are so many things in that comment right there, but the competition is such that you can differentiate yourself with the client experience, that value proposition. And way too often we try to be everything to everybody, but the best way that we can stand out is how your phone is answered, how your client is greeted. And because your clients don't really know all the services that you provide, they just know how you make them feel when they come in and they have that experience with you from that standpoint. So it's important to recognize that by focusing on the service side of things, and the way to do that is to train people to be successful. And the game of telephone doesn't set you up to be successful, but giving a new hire how you want things done, then the question comes in. If they cannot perform the process, is it the process or the person? Is it the recipe or the sous chef? And I would argue most of the time it's the person, not the process. If the process has been tested by 6 other receptionists and you hire somebody who can't figure out how to answer the phone, is it the process or the person? Do you have the person in the wrong seat on the bus when they might be better doing something else, and maybe you can get somebody else in the right seat? Or do they just not deserve to be on the bus at all? And so we can set our people up to be successful by giving them the guides, books, by giving them the tools to be successful. And half the time I had to complain about somebody who wasn't performing, it was because we never trained them. And we asked them to work up to their job description, which is vague, and we didn't give them the tools to be successful. So if you got a job description, how do you work to the top of the job description? Well, here are the systems and processes that will get you there. We have turnover because we set people up to fail.
I have, yeah, there was so much in that one too to unpack. It started with you talking about unique value propositions, which I'm curious about that because I think we do see a little bit of an increasingly specialized nature of veterinary medicine, which I think is just natural progression of we have so much more knowledge, so many more resources at our fingertips that we can do that. So I'm curious your experience with forming those value propositions and how you present that in a way that really makes your clinic successful and your thoughts there. And then yeah, and then my mind, when we're talking about the receptionist answering the phone and the process and things, I went to checklists and all of this. So I'll hold on that one. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on value propositions.
So let's take a step back. I love creating or helping young doctors create hospitals or buy an existing hospital. I'm all about entrepreneurialism and independent hospital ownership all over it. And I do an unabashed plug.
Of course.
For those of you who are interested in hospital ownership, whether it's a startup or buying an existing hospital, but you don't feel prepared for it, check out www.voa.vet. VOA.vet. The VOA stands for Veterinary Ownership Advocates. And it's all about education. It's 24 hours of race-approved CE on how to become a young entrepreneur. So the first thing to become a young entrepreneur, though, is to have a vision. Picture what you want your business to look like when it's operating at peak performance. Is it going to be Ruth Chris or is it going to be In-N-Out Burger? They both can make $1 million or $2 or $3 a year doing it different ways. They're not wrong. That's the way they want to do it. So your minimum viable product, your unique selling proposition will be focused on different things. If I want to have, our mission statement was to provide a Mayo Clinic level of care in a Nordstrom-like service environment. Pretty clearly defines what we were going to do. And so we created and worked towards high levels of service at the front desk. And if we weren't delivering on it, I heard about it and I knew about it. And we had a very collaborative approach to medicine cases whereby the doctors always had other doctors that they could work with within the practice or specialists in the community that they could work with because our ultimate goal was the best for the patient and best for the client. So that was our mission, which meant that there were clients who maybe weren't as interested in that. They were looking for just an In-N-Out Burger when we were providing a Ruth Chris. Could we work with them? Sure. We would talk to them about it. And I had no problem referring clients to clinics or lower cost facilities. Half the time they would come back because they wanted the value that we were offering. But there's nothing wrong with segmenting your practice and suggesting that there's a clientele that you are catering to. And I think maybe we need to do more of that. Maybe we need to have some of the clinics that are more affordable. And, we have talked about access to care and cost of care and spectrum of care. I think sometimes by trying to be everything to everybody, you exclude members of the pet owning population because they just can't access your practice because the gatekeeper is your office call and everything else associated therewith. So the bottom line is your unique selling proposition starts with your vision. What do you want your practice to look like when you're delivering care to the clients in your community? And it could be Ruth Chris and it could be In-N-Out Burger, however you want it to look. It's when you try to do both that becomes exhausting.
It really does. It really does. And, just thinking about longevity as the entrepreneur, I mean, if you're seeing a clientele that, you're like, I'm not having fun. That happened to me where I was definitely trying to be everything to everyone. And then I realized, there were certain times my phone would ring and I would be thrilled to answer the phone and have that conversation and follow up and do the things. And there were other times my phone would ring and I would just dread it. And it wasn't necessarily, because, this client's a pain or, some of those things that we all experience from time to time. There was definitely a pattern. And I kind of looked at it and went, okay, when I'm doing these things, I'm really not having fun. Like that stresses me out. That makes my day worse. So how can I do less of those things and do more of these other things? Because part of the reason they were making me happy, that I was happy to take those phone calls, is because those were the things I was good at. That was where I was excelling. And so by segmenting and saying, I'm going to get away from these other cases, really I provided overall a better service because I was happier to show up and do the work, and I was better at the work that I was doing.
I joke that if I were opening a hospital in 2025, 26, which I am not is not forever, but I'm not planning to, I would probably want a clinic that took care of hunting dog puppies until they were 6 months old. And all I would do is have couches and carpeting and a big open area. And all we would do is play with puppies all day, give them their shots, send them home with flea tick and heartworm. And then when they're 6 months older, and they need to get spayed and neutered and all of those things that have pain, let somebody else deal with that. And we would just have a puppy play day all day with all of these healthy puppies that came in. And my stress level would be nothing more than playing with puppies all day and taking care of clients and schmoozing and working on socialization behavior. Why do I need to see pets that I don't want to see? That's just a metaphor from we
No,
could
I
build
love
what
this
we
plan.
want.
Like I'm here for this clinic. Like as we talked about, it's 100 degrees and like 110% humidity in Florida, and you're talking about, California and playing with puppies all the time. Like just give me a call when you start that clinic.
Well, you could build it in Orlando. I mean, there's nothing that prevents you from getting 600 square feet and becoming, the hunting dog specialists of Orlando and
Sure.
helping people find the right breed and all sorts of different things that we don't normally do and working to keep your overhead costs down because you only have one thing that you do really well. I mean, Cassie, if you ever need a doctor at some point in time, you will have a specialist who takes care of your left pinky who won't take care of your right pinky.
This is true.
And, we don't need to be a diner. We just need to figure out what we want to have on our menu when it comes down to taking care of our clients and our patients.
And, obviously, hopefully we never go quite to that extreme, although I completely relate to what you're saying about your right pinky, not your left pinky. Do you think that if we get too narrow in our value proposition, we start to impact access to care, like, and then, maybe have an impact on overall well-being in the profession as well?
I think if you look at segmentation, look at what the Marriott's done. They have a whole spectrum of different hotels that meet the needs of different consumers at different levels. They've got the $100 a night. They probably have the, $20 an hour hotel too. The $100.
We don't talk about those though.
No, no, no. We go to Vegas and talk about those. You got the $100 a night, the $300 a night, and the $500 a night. And they're owned by the same company. So why not own a general practice that also has a more affordable clinic? You rotate your doctors through. So maybe they just do wellness in this affordable clinic one day. They can see outpatient with sick clients another day. And then maybe that a more expensive model is urgent care, specialty, and ER. And really, you start to, I don't know if I feel comfortable doing just wellness all day. It might get a little bit tedious, but there are times that, and I'm sure you remember this in practice, that you did the puppy talk and the kitten talk probably 6 or 7 times a day,
Sure.
or the skin and ear talk. So there are ways to build different models. And if they had the same owner, privately held independent hospitals, you could just focus on being sick. You could have a sick hospital. I have 2 kids. They're grown up now. You go to the pediatrician. There's the sick side and the well side. Why not have a sick hospital and a well hospital? The well people can go and get their wellness needs, and you know that you're going to need longer appointments, and you'll have a sickness hospital. They could literally be right next to each other and owned by the same guy. For those of you who don't know me, I like to disrupt and I like to think outside the box. And all I want you to do is stop doing what we've done, get out of the rut, and look at different ways to think of different things and create the systems to deliver it so you're consistent in the way you do it. So stop. What got us here won't get us there. We've got to think differently.
Yes, we're going to break down the system and rebuild it with new, better systems.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, and I could suggest that on the education side of things. I can suggest that on the business side of things, et cetera. We need to start to really push the envelope and start to think of doing things differently. I mean, the company that you work for has rebranded itself in a variety of different ways over the last 5, 6, 7 years. Other companies are doing that as well. We as a clinical practice, as a private practice, have not done much. We have just followed what Noah did and then what James Herriot did into the 21st century. And now all we're doing is the same thing with a different title.
No, and I love that you bring that up, and the what got us here won't get us there. I really, really do believe that. And I've had to get creative in my career as you have. And I have said this before on the podcast that my freshman year of vet school, we would have these speakers come in that would tell us about their careers. And really throughout my whole vet school career, any speaker that came in would say, if you would have told me 10 years ago, this is what I would be doing, I wouldn't have believed you. And I just remember continuing to think throughout vet school, what in the heck am I going to be doing in 10 years? And it wasn't this. Like, this was not what I pictured. Certainly, this was a surprise that I didn't see coming. And in having the opportunity to get creative, I think it's made me appreciate the value in just saying yes and being brave. And if you do have an idea and you say, well, I don't think it works doing it this way, I want to do it differently, and you have the thought, like I've certainly had, but if it could have been done differently, somebody would have done it by now. Well, maybe not. And why not you? And that's such a hard thing. It's such an easy thing to say, but it's such a hard thing to actually put into practice. And so, yeah, all the encouragement that and all of us can put out there to say, yeah, get creative, make a new system, break the old one down and build it back with new systems.
Absolutely. Why not you?
Why not you?
And now what? Keep asking the questions. Now what? Why? Who? What? When? Where? And why? And surround yourself with a success team. This is part of my mission in helping young people become successful. Entrepreneurs have notoriously been thought of as people who did it by themselves. The great entrepreneurs surround themselves with others who will help them become successful, whether it's accountants, whether it's lawyers, like 6 of them, consultants, bankers, real estate moguls, whomever it may be. But surround yourself with positive success people. And anybody who says you can't do it, let them go work with somebody else. You want people who are there challenging you, but supporting you at the same time. And I don't know about your experience in high school when you told somebody that you wanted to be a veterinarian, but mine was basically, why don't you become a real doctor?
Sure.
And my answer to that was, I am becoming a real doctor. And thank you for your lack of help. Well, we need to get the naysayers out of the profession. We need to reverse that Merck study that said only 50% of veterinarians are suggesting veterinary medicine to their friends and family. I have a daughter who's a veterinarian, so I'm contributing to the workforce from that standpoint. But we need to bring fun back into veterinary medicine because we get to play with puppies and kittens. Yes, we do have death. Yes, we do have challenges, but we need to bring fun back into veterinary medicine. And that's why, that's what you do, Cassie. You interview people and bring fun back into veterinary medicine.
Yes, veterinary medicine is fun, but beyond interviewing, because I agree with you, interviewing is lots of fun, which is, I think, why both of us enjoy doing it. Yesterday, I was in the clinic and we had a block cat, and my colleague that I was working with, she did a masterful job of unblocking him, but we were really struggling to get a urinary catheter, an indwelling catheter in. We'd unblocked him. He could urinate, but now we needed to get our red rubber in because that was what we had. So the two of us were really putting our heads together. We kept coming up empty. And finally we devised a system that we said, okay, I think if I do this and you do this, we're going to get this catheter. And we did. And that cat is doing really well. And I just remember walking out of the room and going, well, that was cool, because we were at a loss and we put our heads together and we came up with a fix and it worked. And that's fun. Like the fact that we get to, physically use our bodies, our minds, our resources, our, work as a team and solve real problems in the moment that can help animals. I mean, gosh, you hear my passion for it. Like, what better profession is there, really?
Well, maybe we get your company to do this, but maybe we need a TV show, MacGyver DVM.
Oh gosh, yes, I have fixed some things with popsicles. I'm sure you have popsicle sticks. I'm sure you have too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe we can't use MacGyver, but it conceptually, we are so able to do things with our minds, and it comes from the fact that we learn about all these species and we see all of these different things and we experience things, and we are not as rigid as human healthcare. Mm-hmm. We're restricted in some ways, but we're not as rigid as human healthcare. And we're professionals. It is just amazing what people have come up with. And if you look at all of the innovations that we see at the different conferences and online, we're very innovative, except what we haven't innovative is our practice models. And I really do think that that is holding us back in many ways. Yes, I love to see some of these membership models that exist, and I love to see some of these new house call products and other things that are there. But I really want to see more and different. A friend of mine had a bulldog only practice.
Oh,
I
that's
mean,
genius.
yeah, I mean, think about all of the different things that English bulldogs have. I've talked to a veterinarian in Florida when I was speaking at the Florida VMA, I believe, or the Gulf Atlantic, who had a French bulldog only practice. My answer to that was ka-ching.
Slash
So
very stressful.
yeah, exactly. But we created cat only practices to
Right.
help the needs of the cat owners who are unique. I'd like to say that French bulldog owners are just cat owners with a dog because they're unique.
Yes, it's so true.
Um, but how about if you think about it from a business model? We were talking about cost of care. If you only took care of pets that are 21 pounds or 22 pounds and smaller, you'd only have to have one SKU on the shelf for all of the different flea and tick and heartworm products. So your inventory costs go down. You'd only need small cages. You'd only need small endotracheal tubes. And now all of a sudden, if your costs go down to yourself, could your costs go down to the consumer? And you don't need big cages, you don't need big tables, and you probably have lower workers' comp claims from people trying to lift a 90-pound dog. So just think about, can we do something differently, increase our efficiency, increase our effectiveness, still make the profit or margin, but do it at a lower cost to the client?
And be doing something that we're enjoying. And so you go in and you have a good day. I mean, personally, like going in and only treating French bulldogs all day, that sounds incredibly stressful. I love a French bulldog and love treating them, but I don't know if I'd want to do it all day long. But if that's your niche, that's what you're good at, that's what you know, that's what you're passionate about, and you can have those conversations that can be tough at times. I like your analogy of, cat owners with a French bulldog. It hits home for sure. But yeah, if that's your niche and you can go in and you're having fun and you're having a good day and you're doing something that you're excelling, plus all these other benefits, like you said, of lowering overhead, lowering inventory costs, and these other things. Yeah, it seems like it would bring the whole concept full circle of providing an excellent service at an affordable price point.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of different ways to think about it, but the bottom line is think differently.
Think differently and get creative. I don't think I appreciated how creative we are in this profession until late, more recently. It was actually a talk with Kelsey, who works for, I think she's still with Uncharted, Vet Tech Kelsey, who's just a wonderful human being. And I said, I'm not really a creative person. And she said, are you kidding me? And pointed out all these ways that we have to use our minds to really think differently, think outside of the box in VetMed. And that conversation really got my wheels turning of all the things that we do. And so yeah, I mean, these are just a couple examples I think that we've given here of ways that we can do that. When you were talking about having different clinics with different levels of care owned by the same owner, my mind immediately went to, that's a huge opportunity for mobile practice to do wellness on a mobile basis and sick appointments on a brick and mortar basis. And if you can tie those two business models together in a cohesive way, there's a huge opportunity there.
Absolutely. And by the way, big shout out to Vet Tech Kelsey. She's got her challenges, but she's still a great champion for the veterinary profession. Did she sing for you too?
Not on that episode, but I really this time of year cannot get the Baby I Hate Fireworks song out of my
Yeah.
head. I have to avoid listening to it or I'll sing it all the time.
I had her come down and present at a celebration we had in Southern California. So she's a wonderful person, and I just want to give her a big shout out and a big hug from that standpoint. So
Absolutely. Yeah, times two. She's great.
yeah. So no, just think differently. I mean, I know we're getting close to the end, but I was in Japan, and there was a veterinary hospital on the first floor of a 20-story apartment building. They don't have to do any marketing because it's an animal-friendly apartment building. And so if you offer an early morning drop off and late afternoon pickup, and clients can leave on their way out the door and drop their pets off for their procedures, and you've got half the people in that 20-story apartment building have pets, you'll be super busy. And you're on a main street in Tokyo, you know, this is the stuff we have to start thinking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like we could continue going down this path here. One of the other questions that kind of popped into my head as I was listening to some of the things you were saying was talking about checklists, systems and checklists. And checklist manifesto, man, that's another really good one. When you're trying to do this kind of stuff, it will really paint a picture. And so all that to say, there's a lot more rabbit holes I would love to go down. I do want to be respectful of your time here.
Well, let's do it again. Let's give
great.
the listeners a break from us today. And we'll continue to go looking for rabbit holes and chasing squirrels and doing what any good veterinarian does, which is try to find some different things. So I very much appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you and to share ideas and thoughts about systems, processes, checklists, the E-Myth Veterinarian checklist manifesto. I probably sold as many of that book as anybody else just from talking about it. And really just helping the profession, bring fun back into the profession and make the next generation of veterinarians entrepreneurs and business owners and successful. And let's just continue to work towards that.
I think that's a great mission to go after, something that's so important that I'd love to see, come into reality as time goes on.
Absolutely. So let's do it again.
That sounds great. I would love that. Well, I don't know about you, but I enjoyed the heck out of that conversation. Dr. Weinstein, thank you so much for joining me. That was just such a fun talk. And thanks to everybody out there who tuned in. We always appreciate you. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast to help other veterinary professionals out there find this episode and other great content we try to put out there. As always, we want to hear your thoughts on this talk as well as other ideas for topics you'd like to hear in the future. So feel free to reach out to me at dvm@vetfolio.com. We can also connect on Facebook at Dr. Cassie DVM, or you can find me on Instagram at dr.cassie.dvm. And remember, if one animal is better off because of you today, it's a great day.